IDBM Challenge, Season 1, Episode 10. In this episode, Katharina talks with Paul about authenticity and meaningful actions. Enjoy.
At Cafe Roastery,
Yes.
we have been talking about the greater topic of meaning, trying to make some meaning within that topic or some sense. And, basically the question is, how do we as an individual interpret situations, give meaning towards our lives, towards situations? How do we reflect and reshape meaning in interaction with other people around us, within a team or within our environment? And the reason I chose you to talk about this topic is because you have been studying or observing, examining organizations correlated with narratives. So basically, how do we give meaning to organizations? As your last article was about fiction and organizations. So basically, whatever we interpret as a common sense into an organization, that is the fiction we create, the meaning we give to it.
Absolutely, yeah. No, and I'm very happy to talk about this. My background is, I grew up in Canada. I started with a theatre company when I was 18 and toured in North America and in Europe. And then I settled in Finland back, I guess about almost 20 years ago. And from there went into shipping and logistics. So I took this theatre background into my business experience over the last, let's say, 20 years or so. And 2 years ago started my PhD. Mm-hmm. So what I'm trying to do is bridge this about storytelling in theatre and communication, interpersonal communication, with the business community that I study. So it's sort of a mix, and obviously there's philosophy there, but there's also practice and behavior.
Hmm. Well, talking about meaning, especially when we're in an ambiguous situation, usually people tend to search for opportunity and meaning, or meaningful cornerstones within their ambiguous situation. How is your take on this phenomena?
I know that when I walk into a situation, I cannot understand everything. I cannot grasp what's going on in the heads of everybody that I meet. So when we talk about giving things meaning, it's not that there's a meaning there and we have to discover it. And of course there are philosophies and theologies and religions that say there is meaning. Somebody or something has given this situation meaning. Mm-hmm. That's not my perspective on it. I think the world is sort of laid out fairly neutral. There's a lot of natural reasons for things. Gravity, the speed of light, I don't know, things like this. But my world is social world. It's a socially constructed world. And that doesn't have meaning. For example, we say like a child should have a mother and a father, biological mother and father. As soon as you say that, people go, oh yeah, but what about children whose mothers passed away? What about adoption? What about this? What about that? We get into complexity automatically. And in that situation, we can give things meaning that's different from the meaning you might give. And the example that I often quote is, my mother was in a car accident when I was 2. It was her fault. She carried that guilt for probably 30 years, that she almost killed her kids. Then she went to a counselor when she was, I guess, in her 50s, 60s, and was able to rewrite the meaning of the story. So yes, you had an accident. Yes, you actually lost concentration for 3 seconds. And you almost killed your children. It doesn't mean that you're a horrible person for the next 30 years. It could mean that young woman needed more driving instruction or something. So this idea about meaning and giving meaning, to me, is very important. When we originally were talking about meaning and opportunity, there's where I say we're looking at the future, but it's an unknown future. And however we give the future meaning, will inform how we behave today. So you're thinking, in a couple of years, I'd like to do this. I'd like to do that. Well, there is no future, so, it's not physically present. So this imagined future is actually having an effect on you today. Because you're making decisions. Today I'm going to do this so that next month I could go here and meet these people and perhaps start this or start that project. So we used to think it's the past, present, future. But it could be that it's actually the future informing the present. And then you say, yeah, I met that person 2 years ago. So then you're rewriting the past as well to fit your future. The meaning we give things can change, but what actually happened has no meaning.
Yeah, that's very true, and that actually reflects to the next question I have about this topic, and this goes also about towards the interaction. Is like when I give something meaning, how does it resonate when I'm working in a team? So because when I make myself, I construct my world, I give my meaning, I see my opportunities, or I shape them, and I head towards this aspect. And then I'm working in a team, and I get a lot of resonance from different people on my character, on whatever I'm doing. And I'm just wondering, how do you see this interaction between meaning and like your meaning making and the outer world?
We also talk about sense making and sense giving, which I think is very closely related to meaning making or trying to communicate your purposes or your views forward. But sense making is obviously a communal event, as it were. You have your past, you have your future dreams, you have the other people interacting with you. But when you say resonance, it means that something that you are pushing forward or promoting or even just proposing, that somebody else says, yeah, that fits how I see things, or it fits how I would like things to be, or how they should be. You'll get dissonance when they say, no. Or they say, yeah, that's a great idea. Or they say, which is one of my favorite ones in English, that's very interesting.
I love it.
Which means that's not interesting. Or it might mean that. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe they really mean that's interesting. But you don't know. So you're caught not only making sense of an idea or a proposal, you're also trying to make sense of what it is they're responding to and how they're responding. And this is where I think in cultural context, linguistic context, we all come with an enormous amount of history and baggage. And we show up and we think, okay, everybody's going to be a bit different, and I'm open-minded, and they're all open-minded, and we're all going to negotiate this. What is the meaning together? We're going to do this together. But the truth is, it's this constant cycle where each person is interacting with each other all the time in it. And that's where we go back to this metaphor about the world, that there isn't a metaphor about the world because the world is simply too complex. And we're in that complexity all the time, making sense of the other, making sense of ourselves, to them and to ourselves, if that makes sense. I guess I'd like to stress is I feel like we're quite often pushed to find meaning. And I really don't like refrigerator magnets, that say, today is the first day of the rest of your life.
The last question is from Alexi, the person we interviewed before you. And he heard that he knew that you have been exploring companies and how they relate to narratives. Mm-hmm. And he said that, companies used to be rather closed up in the past doing their business, but nowadays companies need to open up for innovation and open stores and whatever. And he is asking, what kind of narratives do we need to an open world?
My take is, from a certain point of view, is cynical. I'm not convinced companies are becoming more transparent and open and innovative because of a driving desire internally. from the board members, from the owners, the shareholders, in many cases. I think part of it is because with media, we're getting more of an understanding of corruption, of nepotism, of things that we don't think are okay anymore. Tax evasion or tax avoidance even, which is legal, but is it moral? These kinds of things. And I feel like the narrative we need is that companies associate themselves with their customers in a we rather than you and I. But this is a suspect narrative. When a company that sells weapons to a corrupt regime says, we are working towards a better future of peace in such and such a country with our weapons, you kind of sit back and go, well, oh, that's not what I meant. There has to be a certain amount of humility, and if you don't have it, it will be brought to you via social media, I think, over time. Everybody will find out eventually what you did wrong. Mm-hmm. And that will drive innovation in many different areas. Number one, the fear of being found out will lead to better encryption, harder laws regarding intellectual property right infringement. It'll create stronger offshore illegal banking centers. And at the same time, you'll have the majority of companies moving towards much more transparency, much more openness, and they will, in the long run, I hope, succeed financially and survive. In organizations who have the power to fire you if you were open and honest about what they were doing. So what do you do then? And these are some of the issues that I think our students are going to face when they go into the working place, when they start their careers, when they start in companies, when they see something that isn't illegal, but it's abusive. It's not against the law, but it's just not okay. How do you make the decision then? And when that decision affects you, your family, or your future, it's not so black and white.
What advice would you give to the students, to the new IDBM students? I mean, they gather from all over the world. They arrive here in Finland. Some are in their comfort zone here in Finland and confronting new nationalities in their groups and how to integrate those people or whatever happens to each individual. I don't know. What would be your advice for them?
If I take a joking, sarcastic point of view and say, you know what, you're not going to learn anything from these people anyway, and it's not going to be a great experience unless, and then fill in the blank. Unless what? Unless you go out and find out what are their weaknesses, what are their strengths, what's funny about them, what's interesting about them. But it takes courage to do that, because they're going to find out about you and, well, they might not like you. They might not like what they see there. Okay, so it's about risk and ambiguity again. We keep going back to this. And what's the meaning that you're going to give it, that somebody doesn't like you, or that somebody's not interesting or interested in you? So these are, it's not advice, but you have a choice. You can have a very full and rich life, or you can sit at home. Do what you want. Do whatever you want. Just be nice to other people.
Okay.
Did you make this?
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much.
I said it has some
It's
architecture.
A little British guy. And this is what, Aladdin's magical potion, or was this drink this and
it's purple.
Alice in Wonderland?
It's purple absinthe.
Purple absinthe. Okay.